Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for the introduction, Savannah, and thank you all for taking your lunch break to come hang out with us. I'm Mike Davis. I am your host for this afternoon, morning. I don't know where you are in the world. Like, I'm still waiting on those chats to come to tell me where y'all at, but I am in Chicago, Illinois. It is a pleasure to be here. I am also a member of Team Drift. So if you couldn't tell from the hoodie that I'm rocking, I am a strategic enterprise account manager with Drift, and I'm happy to be the host of today's program. We've got a lot of myths to debunk. We've got some stuff that we're going to talk about pretty soon that'll be mind-blowing, but I just want to call out a few folks who have already hit me up in the chat. I see you. Thank you so much. Let's keep the responses going because we want this to be interactive. Like, I understand some of you all may be having your lunch right now, and some of you might just be chilling, but whatever you're doing, hit us up. Let us know who you are. Let us know you're in the building. This is your program too. We invite you to be a part of this experience with us. I see we got San Diego in the house. What up, Ryan? All right. That's what I'm talking about. ATL in the house. Okay. Listen, I just want to get some energy going, get a feel for where you all are in the world so that I can, when I respond, I can hit you with the dialect that makes the most sense. I'm kidding. I cannot do accents. There's no way I'm doing an ATL accent on this webinar. But all right, look, enough from me. We've got some amazing speakers that I got to introduce you all to today that are going to blow your mind with some of the research and experiences that they've had. So if you hit me with the next slide, let's get started. Let's get you all introduced so you know who you'll be hearing from today. Now, I'm going to ask each of these speakers in a moment to introduce themselves to the group. But I'm also going to ask them in the theme of busting myths and debunking them. I'm going to ask them all to answer a sort of interesting question I was thinking about. What's a myth that you hung on to way too long? Like, what's one of those myths that you were told as a kid? It could be the Easter Bunny. It could be Santa Claus. Whatever it was, what was that one myth that you hung on to? And while you all are answering, I want you all in the chat too. Some of you participants, let us know what was that myth that you hung on to. I'll be the first to admit, I thought that there was really a Loch Ness monster for a long time. I was convinced that somewhere deep within that ocean or wherever there was some prehistoric dinosaur that nobody knew about, but they just got these pictures. And I was maybe into my 20s before I finally just gave up. Like, if he was down there, they would have found it by now. With all the radars and sonar, we would have figured it out. So I think I finally let it go. But a part of me is still hoping that one day, Nessie doesn't pop up. Thank you, Mike. I see you. I'm not the only one. All right, look, let's kick it off. I want you all to meet some of these speakers and get their feedback. I'm going to kick it off first to Alex, and then we'll just go to each of the next. But Alex Roy, my main man, fellow drifter, introduce yourself to the crowd, brother.
What's up, Mike? Thank you very much. My name is Alex Roy. I'm up here in Boston, Massachusetts, where it is finally starting to thaw off. No more snow. I currently help manage the SDR team here at Drift. Been here for just over a year, loving it. Get to see Mike once a week on our company meetings and everything. He brings the energy. I gotta agree with Michael. You can't disprove that Nessie doesn't exist if we haven't, there's no proof that he doesn't, just as much proof that he does exist, right? So there's that. So I would say, I think Mike actually gave mine away, and I was laughing with people before this. A lot of people have been telling me the Easter Bunny doesn't exist. I walked in to visit my parents this week. There was a basket there from the Easter Bunny himself. There was, somehow he figured it out that I'm in my late 20s now. There was some nice IPAs in there, some scratch tickets. So what's been in the basket has changed, but what hasn't is my belief in the Easter Bunny. So that's mine, and I'm super excited to be here and talk some shop with everybody today.
Great to have you, Alex. And no shame. I'm glad that the Easter basket though has evolved to spirits. All right, Pavel, I want you to introduce yourself next. What was your myth, man? And tell the folks a little bit about you and your background.
Great to be here. Thanks, Mike. My name is Pavel Dmitriev. I am VP of Data Science at Outreach. I started data science team at Outreach 4 years ago, and man, we've debunked so many myths on the path of trying to build a product that actually helps people sell better versus propagating best practices that do not really work. They had a lot of fun doing that. My myth, I've been thinking, I had so many myths. I grew up in the north of Russia, and for a long time I believed that the whole world was just kind of cold and snow. I didn't have TV when I grew up to see anything else. But the one myth that I had just until a few years ago is that my parents have been telling me that you lose all of your heat through your head. So whenever you go out and at school, you need to have this big, warm head on you. And I've been just always following it. Even when I came to California, I lived in the Bay Area, and sometimes it's kind of chilly. I'll put a hat on. I looked it up recently and found this is absolutely not true.
Really? Okay, I know I'm not the only one. I really, to this day, I thought that was true. So you just debunked that myth for me because I had no idea that wasn't true. I'm like you, I got the hat. Wow. Well, Pavel, thanks a lot, and good to have you on the program. Last but certainly not least, we got Rachel May in the building. Rachel, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and if you had any myths that you hung on to, let us know.
Hey, all right. I'm Rachel May, Chief Evangelist and General Manager of Training and Licensing at a sales growth company. Keenan and I, gap selling, and we're out here starting a new trainer program where you can become the next Keenan and have your own business. So that's what I'm over here building. And my myth is that I was always told that I could grow up and be a princess, and I'm just still waiting for.
Hey, got your crown.
I'm still waiting for, my princess moment. My dad said I could be a princess.
Hey, we're not going to debunk that. That's going to happen. We're speaking that into existence, Rachel. That's what's up. All right. Well, listen, thank you all three of you for having not only introduced yourselves, but told the audience what it shouldn't be shame at all, what myths we hung on to for a long time. Again, Nessie is out there somewhere. All right, but let's move on. We've got an exciting program for you all today. We're going to talk about some myths that are out there in the sales world. We've got about 6 of them that we're going to talk about, and we need your help, and we need your support, we need your engagement to find out if the stuff that we're going to present is real. Like, you may have a different opinion. We want to hear that, people. So as we go through these, know that there are no right or wrong answers to this stuff, folks. Hit us with your feedback. Let us know what you've experienced, because that's valuable for us all in terms of participation. All right. So let's hit the next slide so you all can see what the first one is that will be debunking on today's call. All right. So the very first myth, people, we've all had it happen to us once or twice. Someone we reached out to just ghost us out of nowhere. We can't figure it out. We don't know what we did, what we said, but they're not responding. So when we get nervous, we send that just checking in email. Just something to say like, hey, floating this back up. I mean, we've all done it, right? Chat us your thoughts about this, because I'm wondering if you all have had success with this, if it works. And while you all are giving us your feedback, there'll be a poll. If you don't want to type it in, hit the poll, whatever's more comfortable for you, but let us know what you think. All right, Alex, I'm going to kick it over to you first though, man. What do you think about this whole subject of the check-in email, man? Has it worked for you as an SDR manager, or are you like, it's not really panning out? What do you think?
Right. I think, here's the deal. Before I go ahead and send anything, when I was an SDR or just any sort of sales position that I've held, the first thing I'm asking myself is what if I got this email? And then I think to myself, well, I have got this email and it's immediately got trashed, just automatically in my recycling box of Gmail or whatever. I think what we ought to be doing when it comes to the check-in, I think bumping emails up into the top of an inbox is important. You have to make sure that you're in people's ear on a omni-channel approach. So my first suggestion would be rather than immediately going to reply all and chain that email, maybe hit them up on LinkedIn, maybe send them a call. The second thing is we need to remain relevant and keep adding value, right? And I think if we're just checking in, all we're doing is becoming a nuisance and not really showing that I'm going to take the time to understand you, understand your business, and provide a consultative point of view here. So my whole thing about this is like, you should never just check in, but if you are going to become that nuisance, be one that is coming from a relevance, a sort of relevance where you're adding in more value, you're bringing more thought leadership to the table, and then also try that omni-channel approach if you can, just in case they haven't checked that email, which I think we're being a bit naive about, but I'm sure they've checked the email, but we may want to hit them up on LinkedIn or send them that call. So it's a yes and a no, but it's never to just check in for me.
Right. I hear you, man. And it's funny, you were talking about making sure that there's some value there. And in the chat, Lisa Morgan reached out and said the exact same thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with the just check in. Just make sure that there's some value statement in there too. Like, make sure you're bringing and offering some value in the response. Love it. Pavel, what do you think, brother? Have you had any success with this check-in email, or are you like, it's not really working? What do you think? Oh, Pavel, you're muted too, brother. I don't know if you caught it. That's the key phrase of 2022. But there you go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When I just again started at Outreach, I started reading about all these best practices, and this is one thing that came up like again and again in the sales blogs. You should not just do check-in, but one thing that I've noticed about all of those articles is that there was really no data there. It was an opinion. There was a lot of opinions on all sides the same thing. So there is maybe some value behind it. But me as a data scientist, I do not trust opinions. So we'll look a little bit later. And I decided when I see something like this, I need to validate.
Oh man, we got the scientists.
I don't want to give away the answer, but we'll see what happened when we actually validated it.
Okay, no. I don't mind you prefacing it. I mean, we got the data guy in the house, so we're gonna have some statistics to prove out this.
Personally, I actually believed in it when I first saw it. I believed in it, but I still trust but verify.
I hear you. Trust but verify. Well, we're going to get into the data in just a second. But first, I want Rachel chime in. What do you think about this concept of the check-in email? Is this something that has worked for you or for people you've coached? Or is this something you're like, I'd take a different approach on this? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't even know what just checking in is, because that's not what you're doing. You're not just checking in. You're trying to get them to respond to you and trying to figure out what's going on and if they're still interested. So I think the idea of just checking in is kind of a lie. It's not what you're trying to do. It's not really honest about the communication, and it's not any value to that client whatsoever. So my take is, if people are ghosting you, it's probably the mistake you made was far back in discovery, and it's too late for you to fix it now unless you have collected enough information about what's going on in that client's world to understand why they should talk to you and respond to you right now, why they should buy from you. And is there some sort of like timeline that that is relevant to them, right? So like, is there something negative that's going to happen in the outcome that they're looking for if they don't respond to you and they don't start moving this along in a certain period of time? And if there isn't, well, then maybe they're not responding to you because it's not important to them. And then you have a whole other thing. So what you say, just checking in again, or whatever you say, it should be more related to, hey, I know you said this and I haven't heard from you, so I'm a little concerned about this, this, and this. Can you share with me what's going on? So to me, let's be a little bit more direct and honest.
I love it. Honesty in the approach. Tell me what you really want, because you just don't want to check in. Like, you're not concerned with that. Rachel, that makes a lot of sense. Well, let's talk about this in more detail. We've got data. We've got, stuff that can prove this. So I'm going to turn over to maybe Pavel, maybe not, but like, let's go through a few of these slides to talk about whether or not this is a myth that we could officially debunk.
Yeah. Before we actually go to next slide, I'd love, all of you to think about, like, suppose you have this problem. You're trying to figure out, should I add that just checking in on top of my email or not? How would you actually do it? Like, what would you do to like find a true answer to that question? And that's actually very interesting. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what we did.
Okay.
So this is one tool that if you are not using it, you certainly should be. Probably most of you actually know about it, A/B testing. But I wanted to just briefly describe how it works and why it's so good at answering this kind of questions, like does just chicken in work or not. So what happens here is we'll have users. So in this case, we are gonna send all of them emails, and we'll randomly pick half of them and put a just checking in there, and the other half are just gonna get the normal email, whatever we were planning to send, no just checking in. And then we are going to look at what happened to those users. How many responses did we get? What kind of responses? And the beauty of this approach is that if at the end, we see that there is a difference between responses we are getting in these two groups, if we did it correctly, there is really only two reasons why there could be a difference. The one reason is that difference is caused by the just checking in, because that's the only thing that's different. And the other reason is that it's just random noise, somehow something got better. So in A/B testing, we also do the thing called statistical testing at the end, and this is to get rid of that noise hypothesis. So if we see a statistically significant difference at the end, then we know, like, yes, this works. And this is sort of the standard framework to answer all kind of questions like this in a data-driven way. This is also what they use in medicine, by the way. That's why it took a while to get a COVID vaccine, because it was going through A/B testing to figure out that it actually works. Okay, so this is just a background. Now let's look at what happened with just checking in. So this is what we did. We just had the same email. Actually, unlike everyone was saying that we should add value, and maybe we could actually do better if we add some value prop here. But there is no value prop. This is just bump up email reminder, nothing else. But what we did is, for that group that is seeing just checking in, we just added that one phrase.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Everything is identical. We run an experiment, and let's see what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, click one more time. Yes. Yeah, so we actually got 86% higher reply rate, and we checked those replies. Those were good replies, not like unsubscribe and
really
those kind of things. Yeah. It doesn't really, this kind of experiment doesn't really tell you why, but we did rerun it several times, and we got similar results. So it's has been confirmed for us at Outreach. And since that time, if you receive an email from Outreach, just checking in is going to be there.
Wow. I am shocked. I don't know about the rest of you. I did not expect that 86%, but it shows we've got some intelligent folks on this Zoom, because when we issued the poll, what was it, like 60%? It went away, but like a lot of you said that it was effective. Wow. 63% actually. Wow. That's incredible, man. All right. Well, we've debunked our first myth of the day. Let's hit the next slide and keep the program moving to the second myth. Let's talk about what to say in the email, the tone of it. This is all about tone. Now, there are a lot of theories out there about like what people respond to the most, right? Like, is it confidence? Is it a catchy subject line or an aggressive pitch? So tell us what you think, people. Like, while our speakers share their experiences, I want to hear from you all. What do you all think should be the tone of the email, of that first initial outreach? Should you go in aggressive on that first one? Should it be highly confident? Like, how do you usually start it in order to get that best response? If you don't want to type it, if it's a lot, hit us in the poll. But Pavel, since you were just talking, I'm going to hit you first with this question, man. What do you think? In your experience, is aggressive great? Is it always best, or is it a little too much? What do you think?
Yeah, this is another one of those really interesting questions. If I look at my inbox, I would say about 90%, 9 out of 10 sales emails I get are all in this sort of aggressive, confident tone. And only maybe 1 out of 10 is polite. And so that's sort of, if I assume people know what they're doing, that's probably the right thing, and I actually believed it for quite a while myself. But again, at some point, we did an experiment to verify, and the results were actually very interesting. Not straightforward at all. Not straightforward answer at all.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of this is subjective, right? Because even calling something aggressive, right? Like what is that to everyone? It may mean something different. Like, I don't know. But Rachel, what are your thoughts on this subject? Like, when you send out those cold emails, I mean, are you trying to show confidence in that first one? Or is it a little aggressive? What do you think people should be doing?
No, man, I think what you just said, first of all, that's so relative, aggressive or confident. I don't really know what would indicate those things within like an email. What I will say is that you definitely need to be relevant, and you need to be speaking the language of the problems that you solve for that prospect in order to gain their attention. So however you do that, whether it's called, I say be direct.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if aggressive or confident, but definitely be direct, get to the point, and speak about the problems you solve and not your stupid product.
I love it. Not just stupid product. Just be direct. It's becoming a theme with you, Rachel. Direct and honesty. Like that. It's not that hard, people. Those two things. I love it. Alex, I'm coming to you next, man. As an SDR manager, I know you've got to put a lot of these, together, a lot of these emails, especially those first few that's going in outreach. What's been your approach? What are you telling your SDRs in terms of the type of message and the tone that they use to communicate with?
Yeah, I think polite confidence. I liked, I believe it was Lisa in the chat. They're saying be politely aggressive instead of aggressively polite. The difference there. What I try to do is, like, right off the bat, whether it's through the company they work for on a public statement. If this is a public company, I always have our folks go and check out statements that have been made through upper management leadership there. And I try to make sure they're pulling a certain quote that they may have said, or something even something like the 10K. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is, like, we really want to show people right off the bat that we've done the homework, paint a picture after that of, like, either a problem that our service can solve or our product can solve for, and talk about how we've done that and we've replicated success time over time. And then finally going in for a call to action. I think the call to action is just as, like, this is something that we got to put under a microscope as well, because there's a high debate around whether you should go with a hard call to action, which is something like, can you meet on Wednesday, versus a soft call to action, which is, how does this resonate with what's going on at your company today, and creating more of a conversation starter versus like, hey, can I get your time? Now, if you're going to ask for that time, you better be able to come forward with some value that they're going to get out of that conversation. So the way I also say it is, like, if somebody's going to take 20, 30 minutes out of their day, you better be serving them with value, almost an appetizer of, here's what you're going to walk away from this conversation from. So, like, two key components being, you better be ready in case you're called out that you've done your homework and you've taken at least 2 to 3 minutes to buy their 20 to 30 minutes of why you know their company. So that's where that confidence comes out. I really want people to do that. But then when it comes to the aggression level, I think it's going to be a 50-50. And I'm not surprised with Pavel saying, that output wasn't exactly a clear, straightforward thing, because I think there's an ongoing debate as to whether we want to be aggressive and go for the kill on that first ask and get that meeting, or try to warm up the inbox, if you will, with some conversation starters. So big on the confidence, not so sure on the aggression.
Man, that is great. Alex, I appreciate it. And I think the audience agrees with you because it's about 50-50 split right now in terms of the politeness versus the aggressive approach. It could go either way, right? And we've had some interesting comments too in the chat that I appreciate from Samuel, from Christian saying, hey, tone isn't as important as things like relevancy. Samuel mentioned confidence, highlighting a problem that you're solving. So I think we're all on the same page. It's not just the tone. There are a whole lot of other factors in there. So let's get into it. Let's debunk or not. Let's hit with the next slides. Oh, we've got a little video here.
Yeah, we can probably go to next slide.
Okay, there we go.
To illustrate. But yeah, I would say this is actually a perfect question to apply science. So when you ask a lot of people, yes or no, and the response is 50-50, that's when you need science. Because otherwise you don't know what to do. But yeah, this is another one of experiments that we ran at Outreach. And here is this example of emails. You can see on the left, it's actually, it's not super aggressive, but maybe a little bit aggressive. But certainly on the right, it like goes out of the way to be polite. Like, I'm sure you got a ton of email, probably no introduction. There are all of this sort of wording there, right? To just appear super, super polite. Yeah, and we were interested. What's gonna happen? Which one is gonna be better? So
let's see.
Let's click next slide.
Debunked. Okay, what happened?
So this is what happened, and this is why it's not actually straightforward. It's not straightforward because mostly when we evaluate email templates, we look at reply rates, right? The one that gets more replies, better. That's what everyone does. And the left template, the most straightforward one, actually had much higher reply rate, 70% higher, statistically significant. You get more replies. But what was really interesting about it, that when we actually looked at those replies and we scored them, we found that on the right, you actually have more positive replies. Because replies on the left were a lot of is objection, or a lot of actually straight unsubscribe, don't email me anymore. So it's also, but it shows that when you're doing this sort of a scientific evaluation, the metrics that you use to measure success is very important. And you have to think hard, is it really the right metric? Is it give me what I want? And reply rate is not that. Like reply rate, actually, since this time, we've even built this feature into Outreach, that we are not using reply rates. We have those sentiment-based metrics to evaluate the quality of email templates.
Wow. So basically, yeah, you're going to get a higher response rate, but it may not be the response that you want, that you're looking for. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, that makes a lot of sense. I see a few people in the chat who agree with you. Ralph says I'm deleting both, so it doesn't matter to Ralph at all. Ryan says detailed scores with interested parties. Absolutely. Listen, I think all of this is hyper relevant while we're trying to figure out what resonates the most. But again, a lot of it is subjective. Just be direct, be honest. All right, let's move on to the next myth that we're going to help debunk. And this one is very near and dear to my own heart because I've worked in tech for 10 years. Like, I'm selling technology on a daily basis. So the question is whether sales tech will always help us to sell more. So, I mean, you tell us, people, what do you think? Are you like me, itching for like that next piece of tech that's going to help me sell? Or are you over it? Is it like, yo, this is too much tech? Like, just give me one or two tools I'm familiar with and I can do the rest myself. I want to hear your feedback, whether that's through the text in the chat or through the poll. Let us know. But let's see, Rachel, I like your opinion on this first from the panel. I mean, there are a lot of different sales tools out there, all sorts of technology at the fingertips. Is it always helping sell more, or is the answer kind of more in that gray area? What do you think?
No, it is definitely not. Well, nothing is always, first of all. So no, I mean, I love good tech tools. I think if you take a really great salesperson who can use the tools correctly at the right times with the right people, all that good stuff, then yeah, it's going to help that person sell more. But if you take, a shitty salesperson and you give them more tech, probably not going to change the outcome.
I love it. The tech can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I know what you mean. Listen, I got to ask Alex next because we both work in tech. We both sell to both marketing and sales folks tools that are helpful for both. So what has been your experience, man? Are you agreeing that, it doesn't always help, or is it always the case that if you get some new technology, somebody's going to take it and run with it and be better for it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. I think I have a quote from one of my old bosses that pretty much says the same thing that Rachel so eloquently said there, which was new sales tech, if it's effective, it's going to bring your B players, maybe turn them into A players, especially if it's around helping the individual, from the individual level and not a process or an operational standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's never going to take an inherently unmotivated person and create them into this motivated, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to rock. So the other thing that you got to be very weary of with a lot of new sales tech is that you may be asking the individual contributors to have their eyes on multiple different things, which could, in the theory, yeah, you're going to try and move the metric on one thing, but it's a balancing act, right? And if your eyes are going everywhere, it may be a bit of analysis paralysis, or to a point where you are just equipping with so many tools. And I am young for the sales career, but I can even look back to when there was no sales ops or outreach in the stack. There was no, Salesforce was there, but at the end of the day, we're doing tasks and saving those tasks within the CRM versus having something telling me when to call and everything. And we did the job just fine, right? So at the end of the day, it probably isn't great for the guy who's in sales tech to disagree with, hey, yeah, you need more sales tech. But at the end of the day, right, there is a point where it can become distracting. And I think, not to mention, you got to protect the bottom line of the company. And if you're investing so much in not upkeeping and not letting them speak with one another from an integration standpoint, you could be shooting yourself in the foot there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about it. I mean, a lot of the people in the poll, by the way, agree with you. So you're in a safe space. Of all of the people here, 75% of them have said, nah, it's not always helping you to sell more. So we're in a safe space. But let's debunk this myth. Let's see. And Pavel, since you've been debunking them all, I'll take your answer last while we show the statistics on this or the data. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can actually share my personal thoughts in terms of debunking. Maybe other people can talk to it. But I have personal experience with this one because when I joined Outreach, I was very naive. And I we are going to build AI and just solve all the problems for salespeople. No. And very quickly I found out that, well, not so fast. In fact, there are so many things that we've tried. The features we actually put in the product and gave it to our own sales team, gave it to some early adopters, and they just didn't work. And they were perfect from the science perspective. So the model is great, high accuracy, prediction is relevant, but it does not fit in the process. It does not have maybe the right context there, or just people don't like it. Not everyone likes to be told what to do. And there are so many things that we just ended up not shipping, not because the science was bad, but just because it really kind of did not align to how people worked and what their goals were, and maybe missing some of the external factors. So yeah, that's my personal experience. Is you have to be very careful when deploying technology into kind of existing people's processes.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, it seems like it's influencing the wrong behavior, right? We put these tools out there, we try to automate as much as we can, but I like this statistic that's in front of us now. It talks about 46% of us prefer live chat. I know we have all been in that situation where we've got a call for support and whatever it is, and like we've got to go through all the prompts of like dial 1 if you want to like, and it's like you'll just hit 0 multiple times to get to a real person. Same thing, online. We go out, we're looking for answers. We know what they are. They're very specific. We want to have conversations with a human being. And so while all the tech is great, if it can connect us quicker to a person when we're in the moment of wanting to have a conversation, then to me, that's when it's most valuable. So anyway, I know I just went on a tangent there, but I'm loving this busted myth. I think that for most of us here, we can agree that technology is great, but conversations are even better. All right, let's move on to the next myth. We've got a nice one here that I think a lot of us have been struggling with because, look, I mean, depending on how you look at this question, this could go in a lot of different directions. But, the myth is that B2B customers don't buy on emotion. Now, of course, we're all human people. We all have complex emotions. At least that's what my therapists keep telling me. But the question is, do B2B customers use those emotions to make buying decisions? I don't know. I mean, I got to ask if any of the marketers that are on listening can help give their feedback when you're getting ready to make a purchasing decision. Is it ever personal? Do you ever put emotion into it, or is it always down to the numbers? Tell me what you think in the chat. No right or wrong answers. And if you don't want to type it, that's fine. We got a poll. But while you're doing that, I think, Alex, I want to come to you first on this because I know that you get a lot of answers out there from your SDRs talking to people, asking, how should they respond like to B2B buyers? Are they coming to those conversations with emotion? Are they making those buying decisions with emotion? Or do you find that a lot of times it's down to like ROI? What have you done for me lately? Like, yeah. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of emotion in like a procurement stage of the sales cycle. But if you're going to say blanket statement that there's no emotion in sales at all, I'm hard pressed to believe that you've been in any sales cycle at the end of the day. I think sellers have to approach their buyers with a sort of empathy that we do within any relationship. People are human. These buyers are human. These committees, it could be an individual who has had a loss in the family or something has come up. And that stuff happens literally all the time. And it's some of the unexpected reality that we have to account for or just do our best to try and account for. But like my take is pretty hard on this one. Sometimes I'm like middle of the road, but like absolutely B2B customers buy on emotion. And I don't believe that it's like I'm going to buy on impulse. I think there's a difference there. I just think that there's a lot of human emotion and attachment towards different things during the entire process that would just lead me to the answer of, yeah, like their emotion is involved. It's not a computer that is generating the sale. Now, logic is important. Numbers are important. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to be one of the biggest foundations in the buying decision. But at the end of the day, you have to approach each deal cycle with a sense of empathy, whether it's B2C, B2G, or B2B.
Absolutely, man. And I agree. And so does Christian, who's in chat. He said that all sales are emotional, but there better be logic to back up the business case. And I think that's a great way of putting it. Let me go to Rachel next. What do you think about this concept? Now, you obviously have coached people who are out there in those calls with the B2B buyers. What are you telling them in terms of, the process? Is there a lot of relationship building and emotion involved, or is it strictly let's show the numbers, let's show the ROI, or a mixture of both? Rachel, what do you think?
Oh, of course, there is emotion in sales. Sometimes too much emotion, and we have to help the prospect navigate through that so they do make a more logical decision. I think where the real myth is what emotions are really at play here. So the real myth is that people are buying on these emotions of you, the salesperson. They think you're just so great and chummy and they want to be besties, and you make them feel warm and fuzzy, and you both went to the same college and that makes me feel just keen, right? Like this idea that those are the emotions that make them buy. I think understanding that at the root of every single sale is change.
Yep.
And as human beings, we are resistant to change. We do not like change. We fear change. And so those emotions are always at play within this sales cycle. You know, you're putting your personal brand on the line. If you are the person who pulls the trigger and says, we as an organization are going to make this change in our process with our tools, etc. Right? So there's the fear of not making the change. If you sell, you know, sales enablement type of tools like the majority of us do, right? That person might have fear attached to, am I going to make my number? Am I going to get fired? Am I going to look silly if I, you know, sometimes the product you're selling highlights the fact that the prospect is actually not very good at their job, right? And they're kind of outing themselves through this sales. So there's all sorts of emotion attached to the change. And so it's our job as salespeople to help bring down that emotional level and build a business case for them that removes that fear and uncertainty around, is the price of change larger or smaller than the impact of this problem that I'm experiencing and the pain that I'm experiencing today. But it is not the emotion of, I think Mike's a cool dude and we're going to go get beers. It's not that emotion.
Oh man, so you really debunked the way I looked at my career. I thought this whole time I've been successful because people like me. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure totally they do like you though, Mike. You are very likable.
I appreciate that. No, but you're right. I mean, you know, of all of the deals I've worked in my career, it's all about managing fear and expectations, because you're right. It's always a factor, whether it's the fear of staying the same or the fear of change. It's always there. It's present, and it's our job to walk them through the path of least resistance, the path that will get them to where they want to be and feel in a better place. I totally agree. Well, look, let's figure out if the numbers agree with us though on the next slide. And Pavel, I'm coming to you next, but I do want to call out that 100%, this is the first time the poll has not been split. It's not uneven. 100% of you agree that business, it involves emotions. We're all human people. So let's end it on that with Pavel and talk about whether or not the numbers agree statistically. Let's talk to the data guy. Pavel, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you see here, I think this is actually the case where you probably don't need that much science when 100% of people, anyone who has ever been in a sales cycle, even me, I've not been doing the B2B. I've not really been involved in those B2B cycles except for, you know, giving a demo of some AI piece of a product. But in my personal life, I also do sales all the time. B2C, you know, I teach yoga, meditation, and I need to market to people come to my classes. I learned very quickly that telling them you're going to be more productive doesn't work. Telling them you'll feel better, you'll have, you know, less fear, you'll be less nervous, that works. So this is just probably universally true.
Very
People
much
are emotional beings.
Yes, we are, and we're working through them. All right. Hey, listen, I appreciate that. Let's move to the next myth now. This next one, it involves a word that has been a real buzzword within marketing lately: personalization. Like, I mean, that word over the last 5 years has been used more in business than I think any others. So we got to talk about this idea of personalizing messaging, right? Because we've got a lot of tools out there that claim to do personalization at scale, and we're salespeople, right? Like, so most of us don't have the time every single email to make them super personalized. And we are, you know, I think we're battling with, if I take that much time to personalize, will it have the effect that I'm looking for? Will I get the response rates to increase on the stuff that I send out? I want to know what you all have experienced. So, I mean, please, there are no right or wrong answers. Hit us in the chat and let us know what you think about this idea of personalizing messaging at scale. Has it worked for you? Do you have approaches that you use in your lives that are getting really high response rates when you put personalization into the messaging. And while you're doing that, I want to go to Alex first, because as an SDR manager, I would assume that you and your teams are faced with this challenge a lot. Like, how personalized can you make messaging when you're planning to send it to thousands of people? And if you can find that secret sauce of making them more personal, are they having the results that you and your teams are looking for? So Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you have a very big luxury if you are working with a public company, because they have to produce, like, financially and legally, they have to produce information about their company and how the performance is doing and what their aspirations are as a company in the next year. So that's like where you can get your most relevancy, like from being able to blast that out to like, I mean, I wouldn't recommend blasting anything out to like 100 people within a company, but like if you have a large amount of people that you are trying to reach with still being relevant, one thing that I try to make sure people are doing is examining a company's 10K, or if you're on the international scale, like a 20F or whatever they have there. These direct quotes can speak a lot, where it's coming from like a sales leader or even a CEO, and you can say, "Hey, take a look at this. Your CEO stated that this is importance." I think a lot of people are their ears will perk up and say, "This is the company's direction, and this is the line that we need to go within in order to be successful this year." If you can then, and I think this is just as important, paint a picture where your company, your product, or your service can directly align with that. It has to be relevant. You can't just throw any old line out there just to get an attention, because if anything, that'll have the inverse effect. I think you have to have a very big balance of grabbing something that people are going to look at and say, "Hey, this is our direction," and then matching that to a very specific, not just feature that you have, but a value that your company brings. That is going to get a lot more response and a lot more trust off the bat to take that 20-minute conversation. So, there's a lot of other things with certain hooks that at least get a response. I know the same college alma mater can get a high, it's like we've done studies on that. There's a high response rate on that. But at the end of the day, I think you want to, especially in B2B, it's funny because we just talked about emotion, but I think this is where you want to say, "Hey, I understand that the direction is this. I have a product that can help with the corresponding direction." And that way you don't have to do it on every LinkedIn or every person-to-person basis. You can get that done within about 5 to 10 minutes of research, rather than having to spend that same amount of time on 20 different LinkedIn profiles.
So true. So true. And I'm guilty myself of, I used to think that I had to connect with each person I sent the email to. So I was guilty of going in LinkedIn and trying to figure out, okay, do I got a sports team or a college that I can, throw in the email or really get them? But what I found recently, and I think it was Salesbro who hit me to this, is that relevancy matters the most, right? And I think Shivan in the chat said this earlier. If you can make a message relevant to the individual, maybe at their level, like if they're a marketing manager, just Googling what are marketing managers faced with right now? What problems are they looking to solve? And come up with a message that you can send to multiple marketing managers just about the problem that's relevant for them, or maybe relevant for them. The response rates shoot up. So just figuring out if you're going to send a message, you may not need to personalize it with their college, but if you can find out where they are within the organization and what are typical CMOs, CROs, CTOs, what are they thinking through? What challenges are they typically trying to solve in 2022? Be very specific. Then that can get, I think, sometimes a higher return. But Rachel, I got to ask you, you're coaching folks who are going into these situations looking to personalize their outreach. What are you telling them? Are you telling them to take the time and go through the LinkedIn like I was doing? Or is there another approach that you've seen be successful that you're working with your folks on?
I have been teaching this since like 2014, how to combine personalization with relevance for impact in your messaging. And it amazes me how people are still not getting this right. So I want to lock in on number one, this personalized thing. I think be personal is number one. So, speak like, write like how you talk, and like speak like a human being.
Right.
And like read it out loud. And if you wouldn't say it on the phone when you were talking to someone, like then you need to clean it up. So I think be personal is even maybe a little bit more important than be personalized. And I think you need to bucket your clients, right? So like true personalization where you're like, hey, I really like, this is a high value target for me. I want to get, outreach. I want outreach to be my client. And so, I'm going after like these three people like a maniac, right? Ryan Sklara is amazing at this. So, he would just go and find out who your mama was and what your dog's name was, and right, like, and what your last fundraising round was and how many people you hired recently. I mean, everything about you. And then he'd write you a song and make you a video and, drop a rap on LinkedIn and tag you in it.
Wow.
And the man set more meetings than I have ever seen in his first 30 days with us. We told him he had to book 30 meetings in the first 30 days in order for us to actually give him a job. All right. And this kid did it. He did it. He didn't just do it. He like blew it out of the water with very highly personalized, creative, amazing messaging. But here's the caveat. We sell to sales. So as thought leaders, we are always talking about this personalization. Meanwhile, the people who sell to IT are like, I'm sorry, but IT folks do not have their whole life story on LinkedIn, and they don't have as big mouths as us, and they aren't just telling everybody everything, right? It's like, my name is Bob and I'm in IT, and there's never a post and there's nothing about them, right? So you don't have that. And so that's when you have to go to like hyper relevance and looking for something that's like, oh, I see that this IT director he is looking for 3 more IT people. They got job ads for 3 more IT people right now. And so I know that he's having an attrition issue within, or he's growing his program, right? So I can figure out what's going on. And then I can figure out what are the problems that people have when they're growing their IT program or when they're having attrition in their IT department. And how can I solve a problem that relates back to that? And then you're speaking completely to relevance. So if that personal stuff is out there, freaking go for it. Not your college and your mama and them. Go for like relevant to the person. Maybe be a little funny. Maybe be a little creative and engaging, but get personal, I think.
I love that. I love that. And you are totally right. I have tried practicing that more and more in my career over the years. It took me a while, but writing like you speak and being authentic and using your authentic voice has done wonders for me. And I totally resonate with that. And look, we got to move on a little quick through these next few slides because I'm looking at the clock. I want to make sure we get to this last myth. I'll just say that consumers expect it and they get frustrated when you don't have it. So there you go, folks. Try as much as you can to be both personal and relevant as much as possible. But let's talk about this last one, which I think is an important one. How are you all responding, right? We've got a lot to do, right? Like there's a lot that goes into our job. The follow-up though is important. The question is, what time is important? Is it like you better respond to me in like a minute or, an hour would be okay? What do you all think about this idea of like the response time? And as a numbers guy, I guess, Pavel, I'm going to come to you first on this one because I'm curious, working at Outreach, what you've seen out there in terms of when folks hit us back, when they finally show some intent, how quickly do we need to be responding to get the results we're looking for? What do you think?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. And we always, like everybody, we've done studies on it. And we also saw, yes, faster is really better. But when it gets to those small times, like 5 minutes versus 10 minutes versus 20 minutes, is it really matter? And that was actually, the studies kind of was mixed there. There is just so much variance. And for a long time, we couldn't quite understand, like, why is up until maybe, an hour, it's a nice, smooth trend, right? But when it gets to the small intervals, there is lots of variability starts happening. And I think we'll see the answer later of why that is. But this is quite interesting.
It is. And Alex, I'm going to come to you next, and we can even show the next slide. In the interest of time, let's show people. And Alex, I'd still like your opinion, though. I mean, when your teams, the SDRs, are out there sending the emails and they get a response, how quickly are you talking to them about, needing to respond? Is it like, hey, I expect you all to do this within a few minutes, or is it okay to expect it to take a little longer sometimes? What do you think?
Yeah. So when it comes to like here at Drift, we're all about speed to lead, and we're all about like you got to get right on it. 2 stats right here. So the first one that we're looking at on the screen: 78% of companies buy from the company that responds to their inquiry first. The other one that we were taking an internal analysis as to, should we just have a set time where we're responding to all of our inbounds that have come in on the day? Should we do that multiple times a day? Should we be dropping everything, even if you are in like one-on-one with me? My take from a opinionated standpoint is like, yes, drop it. Even if you're on a one-on-one with me, if you got one of our high converting leads, but the data behind that, there's a study by I think it was Vendetta. They came out and said that after 5 minutes of somebody being on the website, if you let that 5 minutes go by, and I know that there's a lot of operational questions behind how can we do this, and I'm happy to connect with people outside this webinar. Within 5 minutes, it's actually an exponential drop, 10 times less likely you're going to get somebody's ear. So your probability, if it was 50 at the time, now just dropped to 5. And I think that's a very jarring and kind of scary thought for our SDR leaders out there, for our sales operations people. But that is a thought that is like wild to me, which is why when I'm on a meeting, if we have our top 6 leads that we have seen just here at Drift, if one of those hits our website or just comes across the bucket, I'll tell them to tell me to shut up and let them go chase that lead, because the science speaks for itself there.
Yes, it does. Well, look, I would go on, but I'm looking at the clock. I know we're running out of time, so I think we can end it there. The data speaks for itself. As Alex said, it matters, right? The first person typically that they see respond will get the first response from the customer. So we all know that it's very important. We'll do our best. Listen, thank you all so much for being a part of the program. Thank you for all of the chats, and I appreciate all of the engagement that you showed us. I got to say a special thank you to my presenters, those speakers, Alex, Pavel, Rachel. Give it up for them, y'all, in the chat. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for having me as your host. Before you all leave, real quick, I'd like to turn it over to Savannah for closing thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining, and I hope to see you again on Tuesday as we have another community event here at Sales Hacker. We're doing a sales enablement, your secret weapon to building a world-class sales team. So hope to see you there, and have a great rest of your day. See ya, everybody. Thank you, everybody.